Yes. Where were you when I needed you last night? Yep. Okay. All right, we're past the designated time. We'll call the meeting to order. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the city's website. Other individuals in the media may also be audibly and/or visually recording this meeting as well. A reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. We have no ceremonial activities this morning. Approval of the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda this morning?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Delegation 8.1, Richard Ferguson has provided a presentation for you. It's before you. Added item 8.1A, which is the staff supporting documentation respecting that delegation of Richard Ferguson, item 8.1. Item 9.1, there's a staff presentation for the tax and rate operating budget variance report as at July 31st, 2019. It's before you. And item 10.2, Hamilton submission to Attorney General study of joint and several liability, FCS 19085, was listed as to be distributed, and it's before you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to indulge the committee. I have a 10 o'clock phone call I have to make, so I'm confident you'll have quorum, but I just thought I'd mention it to you. It shouldn't take that long.
Thank you for that. Declarations of interest this morning. Hearing none, we need a motion to approve the minutes of October the 3rd. Moved by Vanderbeek, seconded by Partridge. All those in favor? Arlene, yours didn't take there. No problem. That carries. Thank you. We have no communications, no delegation requests. You have in front of you consent items. 7.1, motion to receive 7.1A and B. Moved by Pearson, seconded by Vanderbeek. That's just a verbal vote. All those in favor? Carries. Thank you. 7.2 is the Grants Subcommittee Clerk's Report 19003. Motion to receive. Moved by 7.2, sorry. Moved by Pearson, seconded by Clark. All those in favor? Carries. Thank you. 7.3 is the Fair Wage Policy, Fair Wage Schedule Complaints Annual Report. It is an information report, and it is for receipt. Moved by Clark, seconded by Pearson. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. Now we're on to public hearings and delegations. 8.1 is Richard Ferguson, respecting a recent incident regarding water use at his property. And this was, of course, approved on October 3rd. Is Richard with us here this morning? Once, twice. Okay, so I'm going to move on from that. Yep, we do have the information report. Sorry, Councillor Pearson, go ahead.
Thank you. And the information report staff provided this morning, the addendum, does state that he's accepted a 6-month interest-free payment. So I'm assuming that it has settled as far as he's concerned, and I appreciate staff's working with the resident. And we know we get these occasionally, and it is frustrating. But we do try and offer some opportunities to assist them. So I don't know if John wishes to speak on it.
Through the chair, the offer was made through Electra and was accepted by the customer to Electra. I've not received any feedback through Electra or through Councillor Brenda Johnson's office. So I don't know if this is satisfaction to the delegate or not, to be quite honest.
Well, he's not here, so I'm assuming that he's accepted that and has moved on. Mr. Chairman, and I'm not sure how we can go about this. It might be something to just leave in staff's hands as a possibility, making sure when we send out the water statements annually, when we do our water rate increases, that we put something on there with regards to, you know, when you go away, make sure your taps are off, not only outside, but on the inside, and whatever ways to address the fact that, you know, if you get a huge water bill, you're still going to be responsible for it. So I may, through you, just request that the staff take that away and think about it.
Yeah, just for the record, I'm not related to Richard at all. Yeah, although I do know his wife quite well. She's a member of my Rotary Club. I didn't have an opportunity till right now to clarify that.
So I do need a motion to...
I did.
Yeah, through the chair, there is an upcoming communication strategy regarding snowbirds or others who are going on vacation. So maybe John can just expand on what that strategy involves.
Can I first, Mr. Chairman, just expand on what the conversations I've had with them? And
Looks like the issue is resolved, so let's hear from John, and then if you need to add,
I left my glasses in the car, that's why I'm late. so I
problem.
run back
It's-
out.
This isn't going on your file.
I know, I got
John,
it.
you want to?
Through the chair, we have done bill inserts, and Hamilton Water's Community Outreach Section has put out newspaper ads. You might have seen the couple on the beach to shut off your water before you go on vacation. Another thing that we have done is through Electra is that if there's power outages in the wintertime, to advise people to go and get their water shut off, because we experienced that in December of 13, where the power was off for a few days, and then people didn't realize that now their plumbing system is vulnerable. So we were advising, so as part of their protocol, they're advising people to shut their water off if they're gonna be away from their house for a while. So we're trying to do different ways to communicate to the public that if you're gonna be away for any reason or any length of time, to shut off your water. And with respect to this particular situation with the tap, this happens sometimes, particularly in new subdivisions where you don't have fences up. So we've always advised people to probably shut that tap off inside to be safe, and that's what this delegate actually did upon their return. It backs onto a green space, so I'm assuming many of the neighbors are vulnerable to the same situation if there's been problems with kids or other. So that's basically all you can do is protect your own water supply. There's nothing really else we can do.
So my question is, Mr. Chairman, you say it's been resolved. How is it resolved?
Sounds like they've
Everybody's
worked
got a
out,
sense of humor this morning. Eh?
sounds like they worked out an arrangement with Electra. Or Mr. Ferguson was scheduled to appear this morning, and he did not show up. So
I would suspect, because he called me, and I had quite a long conversation with him. I told him that we're generally not terribly sympathetic to these sort of situations, but he still wanted the opportunity to appear in delegation. So maybe he's caught in traffic, or maybe he's satisfied with the deal. I haven't heard from him since then. I know that he was on vacation. He says the kids come in, turn the tap on, or somebody did while they're away. So,
these are information reports, so if he chooses to request to come back to the committee.
or if he shows up later, they can bring him, have him come back up. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
So a motion then is to receive 8.1A, which is the supporting documentation, moved by Pearson, seconded by Partridge. All those in favor, carries, thank you. Staff presentations, tax and rate operating budget variance report as at July 31st, 2019. And Brian is going to help us with this in the form of a presentation. Brian.
Good morning. So we're here to take you through the second variance report for the year. Typically, as you know, we do 3 of these a year. One we would do as of April 30th. Another one we'll do now as of July 31st, and we'll do the year-end one. And also during the year-end, during the budget process, what we typically do, as requested by council, is provide an update on the projected variance during the budget process. So the agenda for today is similar to previous presentations. I'm going to take you through a summary of the tax and rate operating budget variance forecasts, then specifically function on the tax supported, and then the rate supported forecast. So as you saw in your report, the tax supported variance as of projected as of July 31st, we're showing $5.8 million. And the rate supported, we have a projected surplus of $9.2 million. So when we go back and compare that to what we previously presented back in April, we were presenting a $2.2 million variance on the tax supported, and on the rate supported, we were expecting a $4.6 million variance. So things have improved in our forecasting between April and now, and that's most of it's related to time, and there are a couple issues related to some assumptions that we made on the first report versus where we are now. So as far as we separate these variances by city departments, and then we'll have capital financing and the boards and agencies on a separate slide. As far as the departmental variances, highlighting here right now, the Healthy and Safe Communities is contributing a nice share of that overall city department's variance. It was about 3.5 million, so they're about 3.9 million, and I'll get into some specifics on the next slides. So planning and economic development, $317,000 departmental surplus, mainly attributable to the transportation planning and parking division with $431,000 favorable variance due to revenues, and then offset by some of the licensing and bylaw services, gapping pressures, some consulting fees they've had to incur, and pressures in some of the other expenses. Healthy and safe communities, so 3.9 million surplus. So as you can see, they're primarily related to the housing services division. So there's a reconciliation process they go through with all of their housing providers, the annual information returns, that's what AIRS stands for. And so due to the reconciliations, they're looking at a surplus, and along with some gapping and housing allowances and rent supplements. Ontario Works, they've maximized some subsidies. They've got some favorable variances, also some gapping. And a lot of the work done on healthy and safe communities was related to, as far as the gapping, was related to some of the direction that we were getting and some of the provincial announcements that were coming out. So there was some, there was a concerted effort to look at the gapping within the department. Staff's here, of course, to answer any specific questions about some of the numbers and some of the actions that they've taken. Fire department, $400,000 favorable. Employee-related costs offset by some pressures in the maintenance and operating costs. Paramedics, $706,000 unfavorable due to the pressure from the shortfall from the ministry funding, which is offset by some favorable variances in their reported employee-related costs. Public Works, overall departmental deficit, mainly attributable to transit. So unfavorable gapping of $3 million. The DARTS contract, $880,000, even though there's more trips being delivered than budgeted. And staff, we'll see if staff's available here to talk about that if needed. So that's partially offset by an additional $1.1 million in transit fare revenue as riderships increased. Environmental services, they've had some pressures from contractual obligations, which was offset by some gapping savings. Transportation operations and maintenance, gapping savings as well, and offset by some of the recoveries that they make from capital. Energy, fleet, and facilities, they've got unfavorable due to gapping, but it's offset, like there's a number of vacant buildings that have affected their numbers. City manager's office, their number of $274,000, primarily related to gapping. Similarly, in corporate services, we're projecting a surplus of $376,000. In financial services, a major portion of that, so there's some gapping and some additional taxation revenues. City clerks, same thing due to gapping. IT, on the other hand, has an unfavorable variance. There's unfavorable gapping in their case and additional software support. So as you know, we lump the corporate financials and the non-program revenues together. So those are the revenues and expenses that are not related to department-specific services. So a bit of a deficit there of projected of $362,000, primarily related to the increased insurance premiums. We brought a report back in I think it was June to committee and highlighted that pressure. And then there's some unbudgeted legal expenses. Then we have a favorable variance, though, in the non-program revenue. Most of that's related to the trending and the penalties and interest. It was briefly mentioned yesterday at the General Issues Committee meeting when there was a report there from Maria DeSanto. Favorable variance in the tax remissions and then surplus in the payments in lieu. And it's offset by a bit of an unfavorable variance in the dividend related to Hamilton Utilities Corporation. So we do a forecast based on some of the numbers, and we were a little bit off in that forecast when we looked at the way the cash flow, the money flows to us. So non-departmental, so regarding the boards and agencies and the City Enrichment Fund and the capital financing. So in the case of police and library, they're projecting to be on target as of now. The other boards and agencies, that $2.5 million is related to the conservation authorities. And then the capital financing, as you know, we budget and we make some expectations about when we're going to issue the debt and the interest rates that we use. So we're projecting a $4.8 million surplus. And typically what we do with that, we bring that back into the next year's capital budget, or we put that money in the capital reserve that's used to support the capital budget. Moving to the rate-supported operating budget, their variance forecast. So when you look at their expenditures, which includes the capital financing, they're projecting a $5 million surplus. A lot of that will be related to some of the, there's a contractual savings of about $2.8 million in their operations and maintenance primarily at the plant. There's some savings with the electric contract and some service coordination. And then in our debt charges, similarly, we have some savings similar to on the tax-supported side with the assumptions we make on our debt charges. So that's about a $1.9 million of that $5 million. And then on the revenue side, surplus about $4 million. We have the consumption's trending favorably across all sectors, the multi-res, industrial, commercial, about $1 million, and residential, about $1 million as well. And then non-metered overstrength agreements, private fire lines, they contribute another $2 million to that $4 million favorable variance. So, good results so far based in the rate-supported budget as well. So that's it. So thank you. Any questions for myself or SLT?
Thanks, Brian. I have a speaker's list of Councillors Pearson, Ferguson, and then I'll put myself on that list as well. Councillor Pearson, go ahead.
And thank you, Brian. Always excellent presentations and a lot of great information. I'm just hearing gapping a lot this time. There's more than usual, and I'm really concerned, and I'm wondering that we should have maybe an update for councillors as to what the gapping actually means and why we're having this many gapping, I'm not going to say solutions, but they are helping, but that's only a small time period that this is going to help us. So maybe if you can elaborate a bit, and maybe for budget deliberations that we can have some overview.
Yeah.
I know it has to do with staffing and positions that aren't filled, and maybe we need to know how many positions we have right now.
Yeah, so I can highlight as far as what's included in the report. So we have a gapping target of $4.5 million. So we used to have that budgeted in the corporate financials, and then we moved it out to the departments, and now each of the departments has to meet their target. So in some of those numbers that I mentioned up there, overall there's a forecast of $6 million. So the forecast was we have to be $4.5 million is our target. So we're $1.5 million over our target. So there was a concerted effort by most of the departments to try to meet some gapping targets and have delay some hiring on those decisions. So we can come back with a bit of a summary, but a lot of it's related to healthy and safe communities. Of the $1.5 million, the majority is in healthy and safe communities. If you'd like, we can send out a bit of an information for the committee to sort of share the information by division if you'd like. Mike, is there anything you want to add, or Paul?
Paul can assist with that.
Thank you.
Well, through the chair, one of the pieces for this year is, based on the announcements that came out in the provincial budget, we were suggesting an in-year deficit within healthy and safe communities of about $9 million. So we put a very concerted effort in terms of gapping, because at that time we thought we were working towards an in-year deficit. That, of course, started to release itself through the summer. So you're going to see a gapping amount this year that is not what we would typically want to see. We held some divisions to a much harder gapping position because we wanted to help at the end of the year with some of that in-year piece. So for 2019, it has just been a crazy year budgeting-wise on the staffing side in healthy and safe communities based on the announcements of cuts, reductions of cuts, pushing out of cuts. So that's a little bit of why we're significantly higher.
Thank you for that, and I certainly would appreciate an update report sent to all of us, and so we have a better understanding at budget deliberations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. And Brian, if you just go to slide 7. So you see One of my favorite ones here is transit, now $1.9 million deficit despite a 10% increase in the budget in 2018. And despite a $757,000 positive fuel variance. And, that's just, I guess we just set the fuel price higher than it needed to be last year. That is not something management has control over. And so it's concerning that we give a 10% increase and they're still coming in a $1.9 million deficit. And of course, I see darts up there for another $880,000. In our last meeting, we were asked to approve $300,000 additional deficit from 2018, which went through council last week. And then this week, they're back for another $880,000. There was a council resolution during the budget process last time to review the eligibility for darts, because we always hear the same answers due to spike in ridership. And some of us have felt for quite a while that there is an eligibility problem there. Yesterday, I can't remember who it was, somebody told me that they saw someone get picked up by darts, but they drive a car. And so there's those kind of messages I keep hearing are indicating that we do have an eligibility problem, and that's flowing right through to our budget. Transit is late with the report on eligibility. And that was reported at a recent Public Works meeting. It's going to come in sometime in November, I believe. But we also, Charles Brown was very kind to agree that he would review that eligibility report. And so my question to you is, if transit's late and they're coming in November, and it has to be seen by council, then it goes over to audit for review of that eligibility, what are we going to do for the 2020 budget? Because we're going to be into that come November. We're going to be into Transit Day in January. And how are we going to get all this done to try to fix that problem when we're going to already be into 2020 budget? And we're going to continue to see these variances.
So through the chair, Jason Vanderhide's here to talk about that for transit.
Morning, Jason.
Morning. So through the chair, you are correct, Councillor Ferguson. There is the eligibility report that is coming back in November. To be honest, I don't know how to answer the second part of that question of how that affects where we're at going into the transit day or budget day. Certainly when we look up here, and I know you had made the comment about now they're asking for another 880,000. This is just a snapshot as of the end of July. What we've seen in the past is mid-year, this number has typically been higher than what it ends up being at the end of the year. And through the end of May of this year, we were actually only 4,300 trips off what we had projected. June, we had an overage of 7,000 trips, and then in July, an overage of 12,000 trips. So it's created a bit of a spike, and then when we project to the end of the year, it projects out at that number right now. We expect that number to come down. And then similarly in our fare revenue numbers, this is a snapshot at the end of July. We know as of end of September, we're looking at right now 1.5 million actuals to actuals from last year and about 1 million actuals to budget on our revenue. So we're hoping that these numbers come down as we progress through the year.
Okay,
I don't have an answer to that last question about eligibility
Charles,
report and how it hits, but
Charles agreed to it at the last audit meeting to review that, because I suspect what you're going to come back with is the same answer we've been getting for a couple of years, is ridership spiking. And of course, we want to deal with the eligibility side. And we're going to get boxed into the exact same situation we were last year. We're going to be in Transit Day in January. This isn't going to be finalized. Well, let's do it for next year. And here we go again. And this is draw attention to yourself, Jason, that you're having a $1.9 million variance again. And it's the biggest in the city. And most other departments seem to be able to come in a budget, but transit seems to be struggling.
Attention to the department, not Jason.
Yeah, that's what I implied it through Jason to the department. I apologize. I meant that for you personally. It wasn't. It was for, it's for Debbie and her team. And you keep drawing attention to yourself, and that can't be fun. So I want to just let you know I'm watching, as I suspect others are. And, I'm disappointed this eligibility report. That was passed in February. And once again, Councillor Danko moved that. And you were supposed to be here in September, now it's coming in November, and we're gonna get boxed in again. And I'm uncomfortable with that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks for those comments. I'll ask Councillor Wilson to take the chair if I could, and through you, Madam Chairman. To Brian then. Brian, I have some of the same questions in terms of gapping. So historically, it's worked to our benefit in terms of savings. I think as you drill down though into gapping, it notes that, you know, people aren't performing the service. So by people not coming to work for various reasons, we find savings in the gapping category. I'm looking at the transit one there, and so gapping can be beneficial if people aren't coming to work. Gapping can not be beneficial if, in fact, we're forced to hire people and pay them overtime in order to make up for those other absences. So I'm trying to understand, if I use transit as the example, and I only use it because it's, I think, the largest number that you have in all the categories related to gapping. If I look at the 3 million there, is that a result of delay in hires that we had budgeted for, or is that as a result of various reasons for people not coming into work?
So through the chair, I'll start. It's a combination of various reasons. So I don't know whether Jason or Laura has any information on that related to some of the information that Laura brought forward maybe last Audit, Finance, and Admin Committee regarding the sick leave and the overtime. We've got some trending that we've seen in sick leave and overtime in Transit's case, and I know that they've tried to address that with additional resources in the last couple of years. So I don't know whether you want Laura to add a link to that.
Is it too much to ask in the future to understand what the net benefit, the net number of gapping is? So in this instance, if I use transit as the example, $3 million in savings as it relates to labor costs. Flip side to that might be overtime costs that offset those savings. If that's too onerous, then I don't want to get the information, but if it's relevant and it's easy to provide to us, I think it is useful to have.
Yeah, so through the chair, we break the information down in that next sort of category so we can get that information back. So would you like something for an upcoming meeting, the report that Councillor Pearson referred to?
The one that Councillor Pearson referenced, I think that would be beneficial. Okay. I did have another question as it relates to housing, and so there will be a motion today at Community Services for those members who are on Community Services. If you can take us to the housing variances. Of course, over the last number of years, as we know, we have a number of properties that are in the redevelopment stage. Jamesville and McNabb are prime examples where we have empty properties. In the case of 500 McNabb, we have a very large apartment building, and in the case of our Jamesville property, we have a townhouse complex that is currently vacant. There are subsidies that flow through to those properties, and with not having residents in those units, then there are obviously savings that accrue as a result. And then, of course, as is referenced here in the line that you have, you know, there are circumstances where people are on assistance, their income changes through the year, they end up paying a higher rent, and then the subsidy is then reduced or eliminated in cases where people don't need it anymore, and there are savings from that as well. So I say that in the context just to give my committee colleagues notice that there isn't a recommendation today to invest some of those savings into capital repairs by the end of the year. So I just raise that for information, not a question. And I think that's it for me. If I could take the chair back then from the vice chair. I don't see any further questions on the presentation, so then I will need a motion to move to receive Brian's presentation. It is moved by Partridge and seconded by Pearson. All those in favor? And then we need an electronic vote to approve 9.1. Carries, thank you. 10.1 is a shoreline protection consulting assignments report. Questions or comments on that? Moved by Ferguson, seconded by Pearson, who has a comment or question.
Just want to comment, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate staff. I mean, it's a difficult situation trying to deal with a number of shoreline procurements, et cetera, and I know because I think out of 28 funding that we got for overall from the feds, I think there were 30, I think 27 of them were Ward 10. So I appreciate the complexity of this and certainly the recommendation that staff are putting forward. Thank you.
Okay, so it has been moved by Councillor Ferguson. I don't know if I had a seconder on that. Councillor Partridge, all those in favor? Electronic vote, please. Now on to motions. 11.1, funding for Canusa through Recreation Division operating budget from the City Enrichment Fund, and I believe Councillor, oh, sorry.
Sorry, through the chair, item 10.2.
Oh, my apologies. Yep. 10.2, Hamilton submission to Attorney General study of joint and several liability. Questions on that? Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
I see John's here. John, so you're going to save us $1 million? You can come back anytime you want if the answer is yes.
Good morning, through the chair. That's up to the Attorney General.
But it could, you said in the report, you could save, it could have a favorable variance up to $1 million if they make these amendments.
Absolutely. I mean, it affects almost every significant claims decision we have at risk management and in every.
I agree. I remember when I was on police, it was a huge issue. And well, there was very quickly a case where an officer spotted a truck blow a stop sign. The officer pulled him over. And he walked up to the truck to speak to the driver. He took off. The officer followed protocol and didn't chase him. 4 blocks away, he had an accident, hurt somebody. Police had to pay. And we did everything right. And so it's bizarre. And I think you probably give 40 examples like that. And if you were able to, John. Is there anything further you need from us on this? Other than the approval of the recommendation that it was quite a discussion, Mr. Chairman, at Roma. So I think all other municipalities are seeing the same thing. And it had about a half-hour discussion at Friday's meeting in Toronto. So anything else you need?
Through the chair, at this moment, I'd say no. I'm very interested to see what they come back with after hearing from all the municipalities. I've spoken to at least 10 of my counterparts at other municipalities. Everyone has made a submission fairly similar to mine. And I hope it's not, I hope they're really taking what we're saying seriously and understanding the burden that it places on municipalities.
Okay, thank you for I'd be happy to move it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and I certainly support this as well. And it's interesting just reading the Appendix A, and, you know, the comment that because there wasn't a stop line, and that's one of the issues we've been dealing with at Public Works is, I mean, you know, there's only so much that can be done, and unfortunately, with the water-based paints that are put down now, they don't last, and I get ongoing complaints, well, you've got a stop sign, but you don't have stop bars. I mean, where do we draw the line of people understanding the Highway Traffic Act? It's a stop sign, you stop. You don't have to have a line on the road that tells you to stop as well. And it gets so frustrating out there. I know staff can hear my passion and frustration with this because I get the calls every day and they don't understand that every time I have to send somebody out there, it costs money. Just follow the Highway Traffic Act that you all got your licenses. I won't go into something else, how they got them, but it's very frustrating. So I certainly support this going forward, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we get this. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Madam Clerk, did I have a mover and seconder on that yet? Moved by Ferguson, seconded by Pearson. All those in favor, please. Carries, thank you. 11.1, funding for Canusa through the Rec Division operating budget. Councillor Pearson, you're going to help us with this one?
This is,
Yep.
I'll move this in place of Councillor Brenda Johnson if I can. I'll just go there into the therefore be it resolved that $30,284 be transferred to the City Enrichment Fund Sports and Active Lifestyle Programs to the operating budget of the Recreation Division to form the annual base budget to support the Canusa Games, and that an enhancement of $10,916 to increase the annual base budget of funding to Canusa Hamilton from $30,284 to $41,200 to support the annual Canusa Games at the current level be submitted through the Recreation Division 2020 operating budget for consideration. And there's the background report that's attached here. It's moved by myself. I'll ask Councillor Arlene Vanderbeek to second. I had Councillor Clark, but he's left the room. So, okay? Thank you.
Questions or comments? Hearing none then, it has been moved and seconded, and it is electronic vote. All those in favor? Carries, thank you. Are there any other motions this morning? Are there any notices of motion? General information? Senior management team? Nope. Okay, we need electronic vote to approve the closed session minutes from October the 3rd, 2019, moved by Partridge, seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favor? And I'll need assistance with the motion to adjourn. Councillor Ferguson was quick on that, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek.